Hello and welcome back to Business Sparks with Val. Today, I want to talk about a topic that was very, very important for me when I started out my business. And it's something that got inspired by a client that I'm working with right now who asked me recently, okay, Val, I am not sure what I can charge. Like, what do I charge? Then she went on calculating how much per hour she could charge and looking at the market benchmarks and all of that. The point is, though, that when we stopped and looked at what was the real question underneath, there was so much more than just like looking at what other people were doing. There was a lot about what she was deserving to charge. So that is something that I think it's really important. And I want to talk about this today because what we believe about what we're worth and how we attach that value to a monetary value when we charge for our services can really make or break our business. You're listening to Business Sparks with Val, the podcast for expats and internationals who are done overthinking and are ready to build their business on their own terms. I'm your host, Valeria Kadelski, business coach and founder of Spark Coaching with Val. Each week, I will bring you tips, learnings, and honest conversation so you can build with more clarity, more confidence, and a lot less second guessing. Let's get started. So if you're listening this and you're someone like me or most of my clients coming from a corporate career, many years, having a fixed salary perceived every single month, that value of how much you're worth was determined by, your salary and how much was your contribution to get that salary month over month. And we might have had different experiences around that, depending of course, our industry, our seniority, how much we negotiated our price, how many times we changed work. But at the end of the day, it was always on someone else to determine what that number was. When you start your own business, of course, this reality flips around completely because it's the client coming to you asking, how much are your services? How much are you charging? And so the responsibility of assigning that monetary value to what you're contributing is solely on you. And that can put you in a full-on crisis. And I'm talking from experience here because first of all, it's the first time you ever have to do that. So there's already like the question on, well, how much is the value of what I bring? And like, how do I quantify it? And is it by hour? Is it by delivery, like outputs? Is it by projected future gains for the client? Like there's so many ways in which you can assign pricing and you can assign a monetary value to what you provide. We tend to then not really stop and think about what are also the stories that we've told ourselves and all the stories that maybe we grew up with around money and how much that influences us in terms of assigning ourselves the price that we want to ask. Pricing isn't just a mathematic exercise. It's really a psychological one. You are exposing yourself to the judgment of someone else because they're gonna compare that pricing that you share with them with some other trade-offs. When someone says, that's a bit too expensive, or I can't afford it, or just simply no thanks, or the worst one of them all, I need to think about it to proceed to ghost you afterwards. Many people interpret that as, I'm too expensive, or I'm charging too much, or I'm not worth this price. And in reality, it's all about fit. That client was not the right fit for you. This conclusion arrives after so much work around, again, what you believe around money and the value that you assign to things. So let me tell you about my story with this, because I think it's going to help you understand. Maybe you also going to recognize a lot of the things that I'm saying in your own story. When I started in my business, I, of course, was considering how much to price my coaching. And at the beginning, I did what a lot of coaches, consultants, freelancers, and anyone that works with services do. and I started pricing by hour. So I assigned a monetary value to 1 hour of coaching with me, like a session. And to be honest with you, that was also what I was taught to do out of my qualification in coaching, because the business aspect of things wasn't really touched upon. So I thought, okay, well, that makes sense because it's 1 hour of my time, and that's like the money that I'm going to ask for it. And there's a first problem there, because we tend to believe that because we just came from, again, a world where we are paid monthly, and that's a fixed amount of hours that we pay, at least most of us. And so the monetary value we perceive is attached to those hours. But the level of output that we provide doesn't really matter as much, meaning we could be spending 8 hours of our corporate life a day literally looking at cats' pictures online, or actually providing value to our company, and we would still most likely get paid that same amount every month. When you have your own business and you deliver results to your clients, that hour can be very, very different depending on the output and the value that you deliver in that hour. So attaching a pricing to just the time, it undermines the amount of work and commitment and value that you can provide to your clients, without also saying that it doesn't take into account all the preparation time and the work that comes afterwards, including admin work, including upskilling yourself, including, again, like the cost of any certification that you've done and the experience that you have, and so on and so forth. I could go on forever on this topic. So that was the first issue there, like assigning value to a time rather than transformation and the result that you provide to the person working with you. The second part that I did wrong was charging way too little, because I thought, well, I'm starting out, I don't have enough experience within this field, and so who am I to charge for more? And while you might be thinking right now, well, that makes sense, Val. So, I don't know what you're going on about. I think that there is a part of me that was just not believing that I could actually deliver big value. And that's why I didn't want to sort of overpromised by attaching a certain price level and under deliver afterwards. So it didn't really have to do with how much experience I had and how much value I would actually give to my client, but it was a lot about my perception of myself and my belief in myself. I also thought very naively that charging less would make selling easier. So that was also another trying to like escape route into selling is uncomfortable, but if I make my services cheaper, then it's going to be easier. There's nothing farther from the truth on that aspect, because low pricing also attracts people that are less committed in investing in themselves, and the results that you can get from working with these people is lower by default. Just think about, when you can attend, for example, free events online, and you might just think, oh, you know what? I'm just going to press attend. It's just a button, doesn't cost me anything. And then actually we'll see how I feel on that day, because I'm not really sure. And then most of the time you end up not going because, well, it's free anyway. So that's the level of commitment that you put into this is equally to zero, because there's nothing to lose. There's nothing for you to actually invest in making that happen for yourself and committing to going. It's a very simple, psychological mechanism of investing in reward, and just like I put something to get something. If you put nothing, you're also okay with getting nothing. Charging more will actually already put you in the mindset of, oh my God, I need to make this money worth because I've invested. This money's gone. And therefore, that's when you actually commit to the process. And I'm talking now from the perspective of my clients, but it's actually so true for myself. Like I noticed it for myself that whenever I involve myself in free courses, free calls, free resources, yeah, they were nice to, have, but I never truly went deeper into them. The first times where I actually did a massive amount of work and my business really move forward was when I invested a lot of money in working with someone. And I thought, oh my God, this like the feeling of this money leaving my bank account is making me shiver, quite literally. But that is what is going to make me feel so motivated and committed to make this work, because I need to make my money's worth. And so back to the whole pricing conversation. Pricing lower attracts people that are less committed to the process. Pricing higher will make the person want to commit to work with you. And at the same time, I would say, want to make you want to deliver at that level. And that is so important, because that's another thing. When I started pricing and I realized that I was pricing way too little, I realized because I wasn't very motivated to give the greatest results. I always care about giving the best results. Don't get me wrong here. But I wouldn't go above and beyond. I would just be like, okay, I get paid for this session. Again, back to the hourly rate part, right? So after the session, that's where my work ends, because I also need to protect my energy and my mental stability. And if I do that for everyone, there's also not enough time and not enough money to compensate that amount of work. And I see that again with my clients a lot. So back to the initial example of my client who asked me last week, okay, how do I price my services? I've never done this before. Well, first of all, she came to me and said, well, I'm just going to charge 50 euro per hour. And I was like, that is way too little for, and I'm not even talking about what kind of job she's doing or like what is her niche, but it's like, you cannot survive with that. Aside from that not being worth your while and like what you can deliver, it also does not allow you to live the life that you need to live or that you want to live. I understand that there is another layer of difficulty when you are an expat and international and you're not living in the country where you're from, because you might have some understanding of what people can pay for certain things that you bring from your own country and how you grew up, and maybe your parents or your friends and how they live and how they work, that will impact the way that you think around pricing. So, for example, I'm from Italy and now I live in Denmark. And I know for a fact that, of course, like Italian salaries and Italian purchasing power is way, way lower than Danish one. So, of course, when I started to charge like the amount of money for one client that some of my friends would get in a whole month of salary at a company, there was some cognitive dissonance in my head around that. I had to sort of sit down and consider that although that's what I was used to, this is not the reality I'm living. And there is no shame in me adjusting to that and adjusting to the people that I'm actually going to work with. And then the other thing is that you might not know what the market value is, because if it's something that you're starting from scratch, and if your business is in a completely new area compared to what you were doing before, that's even more relevant. So this client of mine, for example, she's moving from a very corporate tech environment with high paid roles, with high responsibility, multinational, big companies, into something creative and something that is very emotional and like personal. So of course, like the value also there is much harder to understand, and the market value of it is in a complete different new field. So she had to do some homework, and she had to go and research what other people are charging and why. You might see other people also undercharging and thinking that is the example that you should follow. And that's a mistake I made. And I'm like, oh, some coaches are charging this much, so clearly I can't charge more because they have more experience. No, because they might, again, target a different kind of audience, or they simply can be in a different market, country, or simply they haven't themselves figured out how to charge for what they're worth. So be careful when you took examples from other people out there. But it's helpful to do some research around that to see at least the benchmark and the ranges. And then the other thing is, and we talked about this in the podcast before, what kind of life are you trying to build? What is this business supporting? Do you have kids? Do you have a partner? Do you have a mortgage or rent to pay? Like, you need to make sure that you're actually pricing your services for something that you can sustain, because you only have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You cannot drive yourself into the ground because you're charging too little, and then you don't have time left and you never get to the level where you need to literally survive, but not even survive, just also thrive, right? Because we don't just want to survive with our business, we want to thrive. And then with that is, okay, how many clients can I take versus how many hours do I have in my day versus what is the pricing, and do some math around this. And I know that it is absolutely boring, and I personally despise doing that, but it's very important when you have a business. You have to have a valid, sustainable business model and do some kind of calculation for yourself. I am going to link into the show notes my pricing calculator so that can help you understand what that looks like for you. But then again, money mindset. Money mindset is what will make it or break it for you when thinking about what to charge. And what I mean by that is asking questions to yourself, such as, what does charging more make me afraid of? What story do I have about people with money? What do I think about people that have a lot of money? Who do I think about when I think about people with money? Do I believe that wanting more money makes me greedy? Am I trying to be liked rather than paid? And how is that relationship between the two? Do I attach the output of my work to my worth as a person? Very, very different things, right? One thing is the work you deliver, and the other thing is how much you are worth as a person, which goes way beyond, and you can't calculate that. So if I were to leave you with like 3 final points that I want you to remember is, the first thing, don't just blatantly copy other people's prices, because your business is different than theirs. You don't know what are the parts in play with why they chose a certain pricing. It's okay to use that as a benchmark, but don't just copy paste that thinking that that's the way to go. The second part is research your market, but like research your target audience. As I said before, people in a market can behave very differently than in another market. Every time you think about some form of resistance about increasing your pricing, ask yourself why. Ask yourself what's the reason underneath. And I also just want to remind you that that's completely normal, and it doesn't come easy to everyone at the same level and not just right away. Again, it took me a whole year to get to the pricing that I have today, and probably I should charge a bit more now that I think about it. But it's also really changed the way that I show up with my clients and the amount of work that I deliver for them. Since I charge more, I'm more excited. It really pushes me to give the best possible service to my clients. And so it's really a win-win for everyone involved. And your clients will be much more committed to the process as well. And again, you can always change your pricing. It's not something you commit to forever. So test it. Do something like put a pricing that you feel slightly uncomfortable with. And then once you notice that you're comfortable, just raise it again. Like always push yourself a little more. You would be so surprised how comfortable you become after you've proven yourself that people are willing to pay at that price level. And suddenly you realize, oh my God, I can totally charge more because this was actually not that much. Really prove yourself wrong and give yourself time to go through the process. If you are not really wanting to do this alone, and I get it because doing it alone is much, much harder than it should be, you don't have to. And I want to announce today that I'm actually launching again my group coaching program. We have 12 weeks to work together. We meet each other every week. We're going to start on September 8th. We all bring our business and we go through building our offer and validating it with real people. We're going to sign our pricing. We're going to test it. We're going to practice sales conversation. We're going to figure out our marketing, put things out there, and really do it together. it's a great way to take your business and yourself seriously and invest, and again, put that commitment in and make this happen before the end of the year. So I'm going to link the program opening in the show notes. And there's also a small discount for whoever signs up first up until the August 15th. Check it out today. And I hope to see you next time. Thank you for listening to Business Sparks with Val. I hope today's episode sparked something for you. You can find all my resources, book a free clarity call, or explore working together at sparkcoachingwithval.com. And if this episode was useful, leave a review or share it with someone who's building their own thing abroad. Until next time, your business is waiting. Go make it real.